Hi, 11 Guardians. Welcome to a Vaulted Strike showcase. This is because this particular strike from the Tangled Shore, the Hollowed Lair, you can't play anymore. The Hollowed Lair focuses on us taking down the Fanatic once again. Story-wise, we deal with the Fanatic in the campaign of Forsaken, and the strike is a post-strike, post-story campaign strike, where the Fanatic is back and we gotta deal with him again. So the Tangled Shore was an interesting location. That's a shame we can't really go to anymore. We start off spawning right in where you normally would spawn in for a patrol zone of that area, and then we progress from there. The strike doesn't really happen in earnest until you cross a chasm, and then you're in the strike proper. So, with that said, we are looking at a Nightfall version of this strike. So it's Overload and Unstoppable, and being that this is from season 15, this footage that I happen to stumble across still having. I don't even remember why I have it, but I do. Because we're in season 15 for this footage, the armor mods from, or they are armor mods, I should say, from the seasonal artifacts. You got to equip them. So I have Overload Bow and I have Unstoppable Fusion Rifle. That's why I'm using a kinetic bow, and I'm using a Vex Mythoclast for my energy weapon, and I'm using a linear fusion for my power weapon. In any case, it's a Scorn strike. It's pretty much all Scorn in the strike proper. There's a lot of explosive barrels here, so be careful and mindful of that. Not only will you be destroying them, but a lot of the Scorn shots are very projectile-y, very collision detection-y, and they can also blow up the barrels. You'll have Screebs, you'll have the rank and file, you'll have the chieftains, and the snipers. I actually feel like Scorn snipers are a bit more dangerous than other snipers tend to be on average. Not always, but on average. Anyways, as far as build goes, I'm running a Void Warlock using Nova Warp actually. In this time period, Nova Warp was something I used a bit. I don't really use it much at all anymore, and I'm running Nothing Manacles for double scatter. I've always liked Scatter Grenade. I use it in Destiny 1 a lot, and in Destiny 2, they felt lackluster until Nothing Manacles. So, as you've been seeing, we're just progressing through. We had to kill the enemies to get the door to open. We got a little yellow bar there, Chieftain. More Screebs, more explosive barrels, more snipers, the usual for ad clear situations like this one. And we just progress onwards. The Unstoppable Abominations, I feel, as Unstoppables go, are probably more dangerous to me than the other ones because of their range potential. As they march forward, I feel like they have a better, longer range shot, but that's just me. So now we're progressing into the first encounter of the strike, if you will, right? We're not just making progress towards the boss. Now we're actually in an encounter that we have to do and complete to make progress again. This involves a counterweight in the center of the room that we have to stand on. Standing on the counterweight will spawn the Scorn. So spawning in Scorn is going to be a thing that happens here throughout the strike. But here we have to step on this counterweight, which only moves when you're on it. It doesn't move when you're off of it, so it doesn't go back up. It stays where you left it. But once you fully activate it, it stays there, and this will spawn the Scorn. This will open the door, and this will have the first mini boss appear, which is a Scorn Walker. Scorn Walkers, they're interesting. In a room like this, I find them to be really easy. We haven't really encountered a Scorn Walker in a while, I don't think, in the game. But anyways, this is the mini boss of this area. Goes down because of seasonal mods and whatnot, and just being that we know how to deal with walkers in the game. It goes down pretty easy. But Scorn do spawn in all the while. So, not continuously, but you have chunks of Scorn spawning in. And once you deal with the walker, you can progress forward. But it is a good idea to hang out here a moment. Or at least it was, right? We don't do the strike anymore. But it was a good idea because if you progress forward too fast, it wouldn't spawn in the enemies that allow you to progress. So you have to backtrack to get the spawning to happen. A little bit of traversing here. The floor won't kill you, I don't believe. but it hurts, so that's why you just do some platforming there. And now we got a little bit of a break from encounter to encounter to deal with some more scorn enemies. Not scones, not scones, scorns. This strike has a good tempo to it. Like, you don't feel particularly bogged down necessarily by the encounters, although this one coming up you could, depending upon how slow you take it, to activate both counterweights. But by and large, if you're doing it at kind of progressing at a normal pace, by normal I mean you're not trying to speedrun it, nor are you taking it super safe mode. You're just going through, doing all the things. It's not that bogged down of a strike having this stuff. The most bogged down it tends to feel is actually on the boss fight, because the boss of this strike, the Fanatic, has 2 hard health gates and 4 soft health gates. Well, quasi soft health gates, and that can just make the boss feel like it drags on a little bit, only because of the amount of times the boss goes immune. Anyways, there was a triumph for activating both counterweights pretty much at the same time, but you don't have to. As you activate the counterweight, scorns spawn in, as they tend to do. Chieftains of different, what's what I'm looking for, elemental shields, so different elemental totems that they spawn in will be coming kind of at the same time. So you have that to deal with, you'll have a bunch of scorn enemies to deal with, and it makes for decent intensity in action. Of course, having a decent loadout means you can really burn through the ads and feel quite powerful and have a lot of fun doing it. Excuse me. So, Elemental Well there, we see, again, being season 15, things working a lot different than they do now. So the Vengeful Hand is a mini-boss abomination. We're a second mini-boss already. Some strikes have 0 mini-bosses. So that's just some food for thought. Being that we are in season 15, we are in Beyond Light. And since we're in Beyond Light, you'll see these sensor guys. I forget what they're called. I think they're not either Stalkers or Ravagers, probably Ravagers. Doesn't matter. The point is, they used to be always solar sensors that they would hit you with and leave fire behind. Now, they can be stasis. I think in the game, when you face Scorn, it could be stasis or solar, that they're not just stasis now, but I could be mistaken. In any case, when the strike first came out with Forsaken, they were all solar sensors. So the Abomination is nothing special, it's not a champion or anything like that, you just gotta take it down. It's just got a chunky health pool to it. Just takes some power weapon shots, supers, whatever else to drop. After that is a traversing section with 2 pathways, a left and a right. The left pathway is a little bit more quote-unquote dangerous because it's over a bottomless pit with rotating platforms. The other one is a bit more stable, but potentially a bit slower with enemies along the way. I just tend to take this path because it was the more efficient path to take. We got a Sentinel shield going off. He's going to deal with all the ads that are going to spawn on that bridge. I'm just going to shoot some over here on the other pathway. So a lot of ads do spawn to rush you on this little bridge segment, and then there's 2 snipers as well. And the snipers can be real problematic, especially at higher end difficulties. So you really should focus on the Scorn snipers in some way, whether long range, whether you just focus on keeping yourself kind of out of the line of sight as you do things, whatever it is, stay mobile, and you shouldn't have a problem. We're approaching the boss room now. So you could jump around in a spiral to kind of go up here, or you could just do what I did and you could have jumped up here. That's what a lot of people ended up doing with this strike. If we're still around, I'm sure that's what everybody would be doing, but it's not around. This is the boss room, and to activate the boss, because you actually step into the little circle there, otherwise nothing happens in this room. So the Fanatic is an interesting boss, pretty health heavy. Like I said, multiple periods of immunity to damage. Summons lightning blast that can be very dangerous at higher tiers, and with arc burns type stuff going on. Throughout the fight, when you're dealing with the fanatic, it's himself. Either side of the room will be spawning in scorn reinforcements. So just pay attention to the scorn kind of spawn in animation stuff to see which side it is, and then throw some grenades or do whatever else there to kind of keep the ads in check. They aren't super dangerous, but between them and the fanatic shooting at you or making a lightning blast, you can get caught up, and it can be a little overwhelming at times that way. So for the first health gate, the first of two major health gates, he just goes immune and disappears. Nothing happens particularly interesting in the first phase of the fight. There's going to be a lot of ads spawning in at those large health gate, or at the hard health gate sections, the two of them. It's a lot of ads that spawn in, a lot of waves of them, which is fun. What I like about this is that, sure, well is always appreciated and useful, right? But it's not necessary. You can run, the typical daybreak, throw your sword around build. That was very useful here, particularly for dealing with the ads, because the actual fighting of the fanatic and the ads that spawn in doesn't really necessitate the need for something like a well, or even, a tether is always useful for ads or a boss, but if you didn't want to run tether, you didn't need to. Arc staff. We didn't have Gathering Storm at this time, but Arc staff was actually a viable strategy as well as dealing with all the ads. Any roaming super type of damage, or something like a tether where it just affects a whole bunch of enemies, is appreciated and useful. A lot of Hammer of Soul in here, and a lot of even things like just your not Chaos Reach, but just Stormcaller in general. So Storm Trance. So here is the kind of quasi soft health gate. He goes immune, he tethers us up here, and we have to break his shield so he'll drop us before we get too close, otherwise he'll stomp us for damage and send us flying backwards. It's nothing crazy, right? And the faster you drop your shield, the faster damage on him starts normally again, but it is a break in the raw damage to the boss. And this will happen 2 more times. So I guess it's 3 of these instead of 4. I thought it was 4. And now, in either case, we're at the second of the major health gates, and a lot more waves of ads are going to be spawning in, but Nova Warp actually does pretty good work here, which is why I was running it as opposed to something like a Nova Bomb. This Nightfall, when it was a Nightfall, was popular because back then the only way to get certain weapons was at the particular strike itself, not a week, but the particular Nightfall itself. And this one had Mindbender's Ambition, which was very popular to farm for. Anyways, it's just rinse and repeat on the boss here. Goes a little bit more crazy with the lightning blasts. And as you can see, more ads spawn in. We just gotta focus on the boss. We just gotta burn him down to these little quasi-immunity phases when he tethers us. We'll have 2 in this case, and then you'll be able to kill the boss. Even though there's a lot of times when the boss goes immune, I feel like the boss is very healthy in terms of taking damage. It can withstand a lot of punishment, at least at this time. I don't know how it would stack up if it was still around today, if it would feel the same, but it felt pretty healthy back then. So with that said, the aesthetics being the Tangled Shore and the Scorn, we have a lot of Fallen and Corrupted Fallen stuff going on here, which I do appreciate. We don't see a lot of that often. We see typically human slash Awoken slash human stuff all the time. So, or Vex architecture and whatnot. We don't typically get a lot of like Fallen level of like townships and stuff, if you will. So it's just kind of cool to see. And here we are about to burn the boss down, I believe. So with that said, if you played this strike, what are your thoughts on it? How did you enjoy it? If you've never played this, what you think of it? Share it all in the comment section down below. Thanks so much for tuning in and stopping by. Consider subscribing to be part of future conversations more easily. And until next time, Guardians, we can't commend here, but make sure you commend your fellow Guardians and stay frosty.